The mortuary was silent, except for the hum of the freezers. Chike sat on the cold bench, staring at the body bag in front of him. He had worked here for 7 years, cleaning, lifting, and arranging corpses, but nothing had changed in his life. His colleagues mocked him behind his back, calling him the poor mortuary rat. They drove fine cars, wore gold wristwatches, and lived in big houses, while he still shared a one-room apartment with leaking roof. But tonight, everything was about to change. Earlier that evening, Chike had cornered his colleague, Okafor, in the changing room. Okafor was one of the richest attendants in the state mortuary. Everyone whispered about how fast he rose from nothing to buying land and driving a black SUV within 3 years. Chike lowered his voice. "Okafor, tell me the truth. I've been here longer than you, yet look at me. I can barely feed. What are you doing that I'm not?" Okafor had looked at him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You really want to know?" Chike nodded quickly. "I will do anything. I'm tired of this poverty." Okafor leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Then meet me tonight, midnight, at the back of the freezer room. And whatever you see, don't panic." Chike felt his heart hammering in his chest. Something in Okafor's tone felt dangerous, but he was desperate. The clock struck midnight. The mortuary was unusually quiet, and even the air felt heavier. Okafor was already waiting, dressed in his work uniform, holding a strange black candle and a clay pot covered with a red cloth.
Chike's eyes widened. "What's that?" he whispered. Okafor smirked. "Patience, you'll see. But remember, this is not for every corpse, only those who died by accident. Their shadows don't rest. If you trap them before burial, they will serve you." Chike's breath caught in his throat. "Serve me? How?" Okafor leaned closer, his eyes glinting. "They bring wealth, luck, everything you desire. But you must never show fear, and you must never ever break the pot after trapping them." Chike swallowed hard. His heart raced, but his hunger for wealth drowned his fear. Okafor led him to a newly arrived corpse, a middle-aged man who died in a ghastly motor accident. The body still bore deep cuts, and dried blood stained the sheet. Okafor placed the black candle on the floor, lit it, and began chanting softly, words Chike didn't understand. The candle flame flickered strangely, burning blue instead of orange. Suddenly, Chike gasped. The corpse's shadow on the floor began to move independently, writhing like smoke, stretching unnaturally as if trying to escape. Okafor placed the clay pot upside down near the shadow and struck the floor with his palm. "Kuria," he commanded. The shadow twisted violently, then got sucked into the pot with a faint hiss, like steam. The candle went out instantly. Okafor smiled and covered the pot with the red cloth. "Done. One shadow, one fortune. Now, are you ready to learn?" Chike nodded, though his hands trembled. His eyes were fixed on the clay pot, his mind already filled with dreams of cars, houses, and riches. But as they left the freezer room, Chike glanced back at the empty space where the corpse's shadow had been. For a brief moment, he swore he saw the man's body twitch slightly, as if trying to reach for its missing shadow. Chike shivered but said nothing. Tonight, he had chosen his path. Chike couldn't stop shaking as he scrubbed the blood off his gloves that night. His heart still raced from what he had witnessed with Okafor. A shadow sucked into a pot, and just like that, wealth follows? At exactly 2 a.m., the back door of the mortuary creaked open. Chike's heart almost stopped when he saw the man who walked in. He was tall, wearing a long black robe with strange red markings. His face was hidden under a hood, but his eyes glowed faintly yellow under the dim light. Okafor bowed slightly. "Master!" The man didn't respond. He moved straight to the pot, lifted the cloth, and placed his palm over it. The pot trembled as if something inside was struggling. The master smiled faintly. "Good catch." Then he snapped his fingers. One of the men who came with him dropped a bundle of cash on the floor. Chike's eyes widened. It was more money than he had seen in his entire life. The master turned to Chike, his glowing eyes piercing through the hood. "You are new." His voice was deep and calm, but it sent chills down Chike's spine. "Do you understand the rules?"
Chike nodded quickly. The man's lips curled into a faint smile. Good. Catch me more shadows, especially the young ones. Their energy is stronger. Then, just as silently as he came, the master and his men disappeared into the night, leaving only the smell of burning herbs in the air. Okafor picked up the money, smiling. Welcome to the good life, Chike. This is just the beginning. Chike stared at the money, his hands trembling with excitement. But when he glanced at the empty corpse on the table, his excitement faded for a second. The man's lifeless hand twitched slightly, as if trying to reach for something. Chike forced himself to look away. It's nothing, it's just a body. But as they left the room, Chike couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching him from the corner of the morgue. Chike couldn't stop smiling for days. The money from that single pot was more than his 6 months' salary combined. For the first time in years, he ate at a big restaurant, bought new clothes, and even sent a large sum to his mother in the village. But the money wasn't enough. Not for Chike. If one shadow could give me this much, what about 5, 10? I'll be rich before the year ends. And so he began. Every night after work, Chike stayed behind, learning the chant perfectly. First was a woman who slipped and died in her bathroom. Her shadow fought harder than the boys, stretching and clawing at the ground. But Chike forced it into the pot, sweating but laughing when he heard the hiss as it vanished. Then came 2 brothers who died in a car crash. Chike caught them on the same night, grinning at the thought of how much their shadows would be worth. Each time the occult master came, the payment grew larger. The hooded man would simply smile and whisper, "Good work, Chike. The spirits love strong shadows." The money poured in, and soon Chike moved into a better apartment, bought a used car, and began walking with a proud chest like Okafor. But the more shadows he trapped, the stranger his nights became. It started with footsteps in his room at night. Chike would wake up to the sound of soft, dragging steps. But when he turned on the light, there was nothing. Then the shadows came. One night, while counting his money, he noticed his own shadow was no longer alone. On the wall beside him, a thin, broken shadow crouched unnaturally, its head bent at an odd angle. He froze, staring at it. "Who's there?" he whispered. The shadow slowly turned its head toward him, even though he didn't move. Chike jumped to his feet, heart pounding. The second shadow didn't move with him. It stayed stuck to the wall, crouched, staring. Then, in a soft, broken whisper, he heard, "Give us back." Chike screamed and switched on all the lights. The extra shadow vanished instantly. The next day, Chike told Okafor about it. Okafor shook his head slowly. "You're catching too many too fast. You should rest for a while." Chike frowned. "What are you talking about? Isn't this what we do?" Okafor's voice dropped. "The more shadows you take, the louder they become. If you're not careful, they will follow you. Some attendants have gone mad because they couldn't handle it." Chike scoffed, trying to hide his fear. "Mad? From money? I'm fine." But inside, his chest tightened. That night, Chike stood in front of his bathroom mirror, washing his face. Water dripped down his chin, and he avoided looking at the mirror too long. But then he froze. There were 2 shadows behind him in the reflection, one standing upright, the other crawling on all 4s, its long fingers dragging across the bathroom floor. Slowly, its head tilted, and in a soft, wet whisper it said, "You took me. From the road. Give me back." Chike dropped the soap, stumbling backward. When he spun around, the bathroom was empty. But when he looked down at the wet floor, he saw 2 sets of wet footprints instead of 1. Chike didn't sleep that night. He sat on his bed, clutching the clay pot under his pillow, whispering to himself, "It's just in my head, just in my head." But as the clock struck 3 a.m., his room grew cold. His curtains shifted even though the windows were closed. Then slowly, a shadow crawled from under his bed, long and broken, whispering, "Give us back or come with us." Chike squeezed his eyes shut, shaking, his heart thundering in his chest. For the first time since he started, he felt something worse than fear. He felt regret. Chike was no longer the proud man he had been weeks ago. The money was there, piles of it under his bed, new clothes hanging in his wardrobe, but his eyes were red and his face looked older. He hadn't slept properly in days. The shadows were getting stronger. It began subtly, mirrors cracking on their own, objects falling off shelves. But by the fourth night, things changed. Chike woke up, gasping for air, his body pinned to the bed. He opened his eyes wide and froze. 3 shadows loomed over him, moving though the room was dark. They weren't still anymore. They moved like real people. One had a twisted neck, another dragged a broken leg, and the last had long fingers that stretched unnaturally. Their whispers overlapped, soft and angry. "You took us. You caged us. Give us back." Chike tried to scream, but something invisible pressed against his chest. His own shadow began to move away from his body, stretching unnaturally, as if trying to peel off. "No, no, please," he cried, tears streaming down his face. The shadows hissed, and for a moment, he felt his chest tighten as if something was pulling his soul out. Suddenly, a loud knock on the door made the shadows vanish instantly. Chike jumped to his feet, panting, his body trembling. It was Okafor at the door. His face looked worried when Chike opened. "You're losing control," Okafor said quickly, stepping in. "The more shadows you catch, the stronger they become. Didn't I warn you?" Chike grabbed his shirt, desperate. "Tell me what to do. They're following me, Okafor. I can't sleep." Okafor sighed heavily. "There's only one person who can help, the Master. He's the only one who can silence them, but you won't like what he asks." "I'll do anything," Chike cried. Okafor gave him a long look, then nodded. "Good, be ready. He comes tonight." At midnight, the back door of the mortuary opened again. The occult master stepped in, his black robe dragging against the floor, his glowing yellow eyes fixed on Chike, who was already sweating. Okafor bowed. "Master, he needs help." The master stared at Chike for a long, uncomfortable moment before speaking. His voice was calm but heavy, like distant thunder. "I warned you. Too many shadows at once draws attention. The spirits are restless." Chike knelt, his voice breaking. "Please, Master, I'll do anything. Just make them stop." The Master's lips curved into a thin smile. "There is only one way to silence them. Trade something stronger than a shadow." Chike frowned, confused. "Stronger? What do you mean?" The Master leaned closer, his glowing eyes piercing into Chike's. "A living shadow. Bring me one, and your own will be safe." Chike's heart stopped. "A living shadow." The Master nodded slowly. "Yes, the shadow of someone still breathing, preferably young, strong. Once I take it, the restless ones will never disturb you again." Chike froze, his mind spinning. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You want me to take someone's shadow, someone alive?" The Master's smile widened slightly. "Do it and your wealth will never end. Refuse and the shadows will tear you apart soon." The room went silent, the flickering candle casting strange shapes on the walls. Okafor placed a hand on Chike's shoulder, whispering, "Think well, Chike. Once you start, there's no going back." Chike sat there trembling, staring at his own shadow on the floor as it shifted slightly, almost as if it too was waiting for his answer. And deep inside, he already knew he was going to do it. Chike sat in his apartment all day, staring at the floor. The occult master's words echoed in his head. "Bring me a living shadow, or be torn apart." He had no choice. The shadows were growing stronger every night. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. By evening, he had made his decision. It was almost too easy. Chike chose Emeka, his teenage neighbor. The boy often came to his room to charge his phone or beg for food. Young, strong, exactly what the master wanted. When Emeka knocked that evening, smiling innocently, Chike forced himself to smile back. "Emeka, come in, I want to show you something." His heart pounded, but his hands stayed steady. At midnight, Chike dragged Emeka, drugged and unconscious, into the mortuary freezer room. The black candle burned with a violent blue flame. Chike placed the clay pot on the ground, whispering the chant louder than ever. "Ochi, Ri, Kuri." Emeka stirred slightly, his breathing shallow. Then Chike saw it. The boy's shadow began to peel off the ground, writhing like a living thing, fighting to stay attached. Chike's hands shook, sweat dripping into his eyes. Almost there! But then, something strange happened. The other clay pots in the room, the ones holding accident victims, began to shake violently. One by one, they cracked open, hissing loudly. Shadows poured out of them, swirling angrily around Chike, their whispers overlapping, furious. You took us. You fed us to him. Now you will join us, forever. Chike screamed, dropping the clay pot. The room turned icy cold as the shadows rushed toward him, crawling up his legs, wrapping around his body. He fell to the floor, clawing at them, but they clung tighter. Emeka's half-released shadow twisted back into his body as if refusing to leave. Then, in the corner of the room, the occult master appeared, stepping out of the darkness. His glowing yellow eyes burned brighter than ever. The master smiled faintly, watching Chike struggle. I warned you, Chike. You got greedy. Chike gasped, trying to crawl toward him. Help me, please! The master's face shifted strangely. His shadow moved differently from his body, stretching unnaturally, grinning with sharp teeth. Help you, the master said, his voice deeper now, almost demonic. No, I came to collect you. The shadows hissed in agreement, pulling Chike closer to the darkest corner of the room. His screams echoed as his own shadow began to stretch unnaturally, separating from his body. As the clock struck 3 a.m., the lights in the mortuary flickered and went out completely. When they came back, the room was empty. Chike was gone. Only his shoes remained on the floor, and on the wall was a fresh, black handprint shaped like a shadow's palm. Okafor entered minutes later, staring at the mess in shock. He whispered under his breath, Chike, you shouldn't have tried to take a living one. But as he turned to leave, his own shadow twitched slightly behind him, its head bending unnaturally. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.